it's Christian with St. Augustine TV. You know, I reluctantly began my foray into local St. Johns County and St. Augustine politics out of curiosity. I wanted to understand why the public spaces in my adopted hometown, that by all accounts is booming, look like shit. Why the plaza, the parks, the medians, the entrances, and even the main tourist drag are being neglected. Why is beautification seemingly treated like a dirty word, and the details hardly considered? This political season, St. Augustine TV invites you to come along with us on a journey as we educate ourselves on how St. Johns County and St. Augustine City politics actually work. We have invited every county and city candidate running for office during this election season to sit and talk with us. Hopefully along the way, we find an answer to my original question, and in the process, all of us become more informed and even become a stronger community. Hey, it's Christian with St. Augustine TV. In the interest of civics, we are sitting down today with Ashleigh Barnes, who is running for City Commission Seat 4. But first, I want to make a disclaimer. St. Augustine TV has invited every candidate running for St. Johns County and St. Augustine City Commission to sit and talk with us. We cannot control who accepts that invitation. Elaine and I, my wife, are doing this purely out of a civic service and a way to meet people. We are volunteering our time and effort to do this. We have never received any revenue or compensation of any kind for anything. Heck, we're not even monetized on YouTube. We are simply featuring those candidates who agree to sit down and talk with us, and welcome all who do so. It's free publicity, and more importantly, an opportunity for candidates to share their ideas with viewers and voters. Again, I am sitting down with Ashleigh Barnes, who is running for City Commission Seat 4. The big question, what's making you run for City Commission, and why now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is really exciting. We're in a beautiful place. Jonathan and I, that's my husband, we lived and worked all over the world. And 14 years ago, we came back here to raise a family. And we did that intentionally. And we did that because we truly think that St. Augustine's special. It is a special place to live, and we wanted our kids to grow up here. I think that what makes it special is its unique neighborhoods, its unique businesses. We have this incredible history, and we have this gorgeous coast. And so I think we have all the components of something that could be absolutely incredible. But after working on the Planning and Zoning Board for 4 years, I also had a front row seat to what pressures, and there are incredible pressures that the city faces, right? We have mobility pressure, we have flooding, right? So all of these issues. And so part of it is that civic duty. The other part is that my youngest is 5 years old and I have more time to invest in public service. So it's part civic, part personal.
So viewers can understand who you are. What is your background? And why do you believe that you're ready to govern in the city?
Yeah, thank you so much. So professionally, I've worn a few hats. So attorney, law professor, right? So since moving to St. Augustine, I have been a small business owner and an entrepreneur. So I have a professional life that has been built around dealing with complex issues where solutions are not always obvious and stakeholders don't always agree, right? So as a small business owner, you're used to adapting to an ever-changing landscape. So as an entrepreneur, or it's actually a startup founder, you learn something. Actually, this is quite fundamental. So you can only solve a problem if you listen to the people who are experiencing the problem. Right? So you start from listening, you adapt, you listen, right? We can only improve if we listen. On the other hand, I have to be able to set a long-term vision on one hand, and then I have to be able to test incrementally, right? So that we can move continually towards that vision. And then obviously I would be new to the commission, but I'm not new to public service, right? For the city. I served on the Planning and Zoning Board for almost 4 years. That's 500 applications from across the city. And I think I bring all of that to bear as a commissioner.
She's talking my language. She's talking problem solving. And, because An intellectual is a person who thinks about and analyzes and critiques the normative problems of society and proposes solutions. And I do believe that this is a time that we need some intellectuals to rise to the fore. Anyway, what do you think the biggest, and this is a tough one, what do you think the biggest issue facing the city is right now?
So you're not going to like my answer because I'm going to make it issues. So first, we have to have resilient infrastructure and mobility. I think those two things determine livability, right? So if we do not have resilient infrastructure, so resiliency and infrastructure right in front of our nose, nothing else matters, right? So we're talking about floodage, drainage, utilities, roads. That has to be first and foremost. Second is mobility, right? This is the everyday frustration that everybody has. That's congestion, that's unsafe crossings, that's neighborhood spillover, that's the night of lights, right? All of these issues with mobility, we have to do it, and we have to get to everyday mobility now. Those are the two issues that I see.
Yes, I believe mobility is kind of a complex issue, and there's possibly, there's not one silver bullet as far as I can tell. It's going to have to be a series of solutions.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever is prioritized, you get more of. This is a famous quote that I regularly share. Whatever is prioritized, you get more of. What would be your top 3 priorities?
Yes, so thank you. So I have 3. So we've already talked about resilient infrastructure. That is first and foremost. The second is mobility. And I talk about this as an accessible downtown. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we need to connect our neighborhoods to the downtown safely, effectively, without every trip requiring a car. So that can be tree canopy. That's resiliency infrastructure, right? So we need safe biking connections, right, between our neighborhoods and the downtown.
Hallelujah.
Oh, and we also, if we're going to have a circulator, and I'm hearing this from everybody, they want to circulate, but 2 things have to happen. We need priority flow for our circulator. A circulator only is effective if it circulates, but we also have to connect it with our neighborhoods, right? Just circulating, and I understand it's an MVP, right? But directionally it's correct, but we need to expand that. I think those things are exceptionally important when we talk about mobility. The last thing that I focus on, or I think is important, is strong neighborhoods, right? So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is some of the same things, like residents, they want to see that they have tree canopy, they have nice sidewalks, safe sidewalks, they have a way to connect, right, to the downtown without having to drive a car, and then they want traffic calming mechanisms. And I don't mean a speed hump. There's a variety of ways to do that and also make neighborhoods look more beautiful. And the last component of this, and I realize I'm talking a long time about our strong neighborhoods, is that we have incredible local businesses that serve our neighborhood. So right here in Lincolnville, for us, that's La Nouvelle, for example. It's a Raga food truck, it's the fish camp, it's the distillery, it's the ice plant. Those businesses that serve our communities raise our quality of life. So the question then becomes, how is the city supporting those businesses that also strengthen our neighborhoods?
I'm from Baltimore originally, and we called ourselves a city of neighborhoods. And in fact, isn't that really what a city is a patchwork of neighborhoods? All right, let's talk tourism. And this is something that I didn't understand, that for all the tourism that St. Augustine hosts, the sales tax goes to the state, the bed tax goes to the county, and the city is left sort of hustling for these little chunks of money that it can figure out how to make from tourism. The city itself sees a surprisingly little benefit from all of the tourism it hosts. Now, its businesses obviously see a lot of benefit, but the city itself gets surprisingly little revenue for all of this large tourism, because tourism is booming here. I mean, if we look at just the Tourist Development Council's funding, which is funded through the bed tax, it increased by $10 million from 2024 to 2025. Yet my issue is I don't see much of that being reinvested into the city, into the plaza, down along St. George Street? Why don't we have flowers all down St. George Street? Why do our entrances to town like Zora Neale Hurston Park look so bad? Why do all of the city parks, as far as I'm concerned, we did a video covering them, that are not operated by the county, why do they all look so bad? And I feel like these are places where resident interest and tourism interest combined. But what kind of effect do you think, let's talk about tourism more broadly and the effects of tourism. But I think that this issue is a big one, that St. Augustine needs to somehow find a way for more reinvestment.
Yes, no, and I definitely agree. So I think first and foremost, we have to say this, is that this is not a city versus county issue. It is, I think, so we have problems within the city. We have an influx of visitors, right? Those problems don't stop at our borders, right? At our city limits, and the solutions can't either. We have to have a better relationship with the county, and that is absolutely essential. And I think part of that is we need to think about, so for example, from the bed tax alone in December, the city raised just under $1 million in bed tax. That's just within the city limits, right? That's not even the full limits, or that's not the full duration of the Night of Lights, right? I'd love to know those numbers, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge influx. But what is bad? Like, I will always come back. What is bad for residents is bad for our visitors. What is bad for the city, I firmly believe is bad for the county. Mm-hmm. This is where we have to come together to do two things. We need to understand, and the city is getting better at this, is understand what are the costs, right? What are the annual costs of running these types of events effectively, right? And then the other is, what are the changes, the investment, the infrastructure that we can invest now, right, that impact that cost over time? And that's a fundamentally different conversation. Everybody loved having more of the circulator, but if we haven't invested in the infrastructure to ensure that circulator can circulate, then it's not providing a solution. We spent $500K on the circulator, right? We need to ensure that it circulates, right? So that way more people are on it, and then we're decongesting. It makes for a better event. So it's not just how much is the cost, it's how can we invest to make the experience better as well. And side bonus, usually invest now to decrease the cost over time. I think this issue turns on both of those two issues, right? It's not city versus county, having a better relationship and forever focusing on that long-term investment. And that is a better solution, city versus county, for both of them, and resident versus tourist for both of them.
I actually see that, for a while when I first got into trying to understand St. Johns County and St. Augustine City politics, I thought the biggest issues were for the county, overdevelopment, and I thought the city was over tourism. But now, just sort of what I'm learning along the way is that this is possibly the biggest issue right now, is this divide between the city and the county. And I mean, I've actually heard some, and it's hearsay, but I've heard some really awful things. And right now, and recently I dipped my toe into St. Johns County politics, and I was shocked to see how negative and low vibrational it is. It's a very negative thing. And one person told me that if the city wants something, they have to come here on their knees and beg for it. And I'm like, if that at all encapsulates the relationship right now, that's, in my opinion, it's disgusting. And I don't know if that is true, if that's what exists, but we need people, if that is there, we need some people to put on their big boy and big girl pants and get over it and come together. And I really want to see the negativity be rejected in our politics so that we can get into creator mode, and that we can come together, not all of this negative. It's just negativity. It's a negativity.
No, and it's not productive. So I think that governing happens when we have overlap, right? And so one of the things that I was saying is that as a startup founder, how do we get at problems? We listen. So my job, right, as a leader, is to distinguish and to really distill. We have fear, right? Mm-hmm. People are afraid because their city, their county is changing in ways that they feel that they don't have a say in. Yes. And that is real. Businesses are feeling, and tourism is feeling vilified. The city, the county is feeling vilified, right? These are the villains. So my job is to distill the fear, the noise, where can we find overlap? And I've met with people. This has been a learning curve for me in the last 6 weeks, meeting with people at the county level and business community, the small business community, and residents. And what you're hearing, the same fear over and over and over. Residents feel, everyone feels like they're not being listened to. So part of our job is to listen and showing up. And one of the things that I thought was incredible is that once we get past that, right? So you have leaders that can bring people together to enable listening and really get past that. I mean, that's where it gets creative. And that's what I've had in every single meeting because, and this is important, people love St. Augustine, right? And that's across, right? That's across county, that's across city, that's business, visitors. People truly care and are invested. So if we can step outside of that fear and really be willing to get uncomfortable, that's where you say creative, that's where the magic, that's when it gets fun, right? We're not just getting through mobility. We're not just getting through the night of lights. It's something that we all, and I think truly that there is a willingness, right? People want someone who's reasonable, right? Ideology is not a governing strategy.
No.
They want to understand that you're listening, that you're willing to follow through, and they want to see that. And that's what builds trust. And that's what enables this conversation to move past it, to get creative.
You just got to a really big thing there, trust. I just heard this morning, trust is love, or love is trust. So there is a lot of distrust out there right now, and and that's a sad reflection of something. Why do you think there is so much distrust?
So I think that as a community, we've painted ourselves into corners, right? So as residents, we are not listened to. As businesses, of the county, we feel demonized, right? So we've all painted ourselves as pro-resident, pro-business, pro-county, right? That we once you paint yourself into that corner, then what does that mean? That means as I start to think creative, governing happens as a series of trade-offs. Our job is to make those trade-offs visible, right? So sometimes, right, you have to do those trade-offs, and it might not always be like any of those three things. A decision has to come where everybody goes home a little unhappy. And if we can't get to that, right, then we stay painted into our corners and we are not governing. We are merely getting through.
Well, my belief is that actually intelligent solutions, and the true definition of intelligence, are win-win scenarios. Look for the win-win scenarios. Bandits are the people who want to just benefit themselves at the harm of others, and stupid people are the people that don't benefit themselves nor others. So we've kind of got a little bit of all of that going on right now.
But I still think we have to be honest about that. So we are governing an overlap. So we've already decided that this benefits everybody, but there's always a series of trade-offs, and we have to be able to see that overlap, right? And I think that's the biggest, is that people truly don't understand what our businesses bring, what our tourism bring, and what our residents bring. And until we can acknowledge that, we're in our corners, and everything is just getting worse, and nothing we can do is going to make us better. And that's not what I'm seeing when I talk to people.
No, I mean, it's amazing to me how negative a lot of the politics is, because I talk to so many people around here. We're good people. I love the people of St. Augustine. I'm amazed, how good the people are around here.
They love it, and they're invested. And I think that you see that every time you have an individual conversation, right? Once you start to scale that, then we start to go to our corners.
So I don't think all of this negativity is reflective of who we are. So I really would like to see a rejection of the negativity again.
But when you move the conversation from what are you concerned about to what would make this city or this issue wildly successful, that's when you see it.
Well, it's because then they realize, I'm not reacting to something. I don't have to fear something. I'm actually a creator along with you. And the truth is, we are all creators. We're creating this place together. And especially in local politics, I mean, everybody has a voice, and everybody can really be heard in local politics, and has an effect.
And it has a contribution, right? Each of these members of our community have an important contribution that needs to be recognized.
100%. I mean, I've actually seen city council and county commission meetings be swayed by just a small group of people. So we have, I mean, people have a voice in local politics. Maybe not so much at the federal level, but here in your local community, we are all co-creators.
Yes, and one of the most effective, like when I was on the planning and zoning board, like one of the most important moments is when you have those, like hundreds of people from a neighborhood or a business community coming to our meetings to say, hey, this matters. And that's when we listen.
Now, one of the reasons why I got into all of this is because I started to see the downtown become, you know, to quote Matt Brown, because it's a more diplomatic way of saying it, little threadbare. And you know, I run all the downtown, and I saw more trash and litter downtown. I saw these weird cones that don't seem to make any sense, and signs just littered along the side. And you know, and I started looking at our parks, and they all look so bad. And you know, and I believe in towns like this, details should actually be a part of its business model. You know, Savannah, Charleston, all these places, you know, there's nothing out of place there. And they create these beautiful things that people want to be around. Yet St. Augustine has taken a very different approach where the word beautification almost seems like a dirty word, and the details seem hardly considered. You know, what do you think about the details?
Yeah, so and I was thinking, like, so there's a few upgrades that we're going to get. We've talked about the Francis Field, and I'm very excited about turning that threadbare heat, you know. Oh, that benefits. And, yes, and the local school as well, where my kids go. So what I would say is this, is that I think that we have some good bones, right? So if we look at this particular park and amazing bones. Right? So look at the big trees. And even, so for me, I'm a huge on tree canopy. Tree canopy is mobility infrastructure. So the trees and the plaza are incredible. So what I think is, I was talking to one of the business owners downtown, and they were like, hey, like, we love these pots, and surprisingly they've hung up that are hanging, right, the pots downtown, but 1 and 3 are broken or the flowers are dead, right? So then it's not that we don't have the infrastructure here, is that let's say that it looks tired. So then my question always goes back to, okay, so if there's an issue, right, what revenue is this being pulled from? How much are we investing in it? And I mean, even since I've lived here, the city stopped taking care of the right of way, right, in our neighborhood, right? That also has a reflection not only on our neighborhoods, but the city itself. So this would come back to a numbers game. And this is where everybody has overlaps. And I've heard this from business owners of hotels and residents, right? If our downtown, our public spaces, right, look cared for, then people, we said this, take more care. And it's a reflection, right? You come downtown and yes, you see these old, beautiful trees, but you also see trash everywhere, or you see that these plants are kind of dying, or
the amount of cigarette butts that are in those urns along St. George Street that never seem to get picked up. Like, what is that?
So for me, this is easy governing. There is overlap, and it is deemed an issue, right? So then we have to, like, what's the strategy? How do we get at this? And then that's first going to the numbers, right? What are our revenue sources and what's currently being spent? And right, how can we do better? What is it going to take to do better?
For me, the revenue source is the revenue that the city is actually already generating, but the county is taking. And that's in my opinion. Like, more of that bed tax money needs to find its way back into the city and not just go up to North County or wherever it's going right now.
Yes, but again, that comes back to having that relationship. So everybody benefits when the main tourist attraction, so let's say here and our coast, looks better. That's good for tourism, that's good for our visitors, and that is absolutely good for our residents. So where can we find overlap? Residents just have to see it more, right? So all three of those, beautifying our public spaces, I'll say it's an easy win. Obviously it's not so easy in a sense that it hasn't been done, but that's overlap.
It wouldn't even cost that much in the relative grand scheme of things. That's what kind of surprises me. Again, to me it's about, does the city pay attention to details or not?
And mine always comes back to paying attention to details means, what's the budget line item for that? What is it?
But it's also an ethos too. It's also, I'm more of a philosophy type of person. Like, what is the philosophy guiding behind this?
You don't see, like, everybody feels this way. Yeah. Residents, business, and it reflects on the visitors who come here. So then if everybody agrees on it, then we need to see, right, how much is being spent and why isn't it more, or what are the ways that we can work with the county, right, to say, hey, this is a priority that we need to focus on. This is easy math for me. Why hasn't it been done so far? You're right. It's because it's not been a priority.
Whatever you prioritize, you get more of. So if we prioritize parking and cars, we're going to get more parking and cars.
But again, everybody cares about this. So I think that's an easy problem to solve.
Oh, I think it's a very easy problem to solve. That's why I'm surprised it hasn't been done. Many cities in the 1970s invested in parking garages and parking lots and tried to run tourism white hot while overlooking quality of life issues. All of them, without exceptions, are trying to reverse this. Why do you think the policies of St. Augustine City look similarly regressive to this era?
So let me try to think about how to dissect that. I think that the prevailing presumption has been so far, right? The thing that people have believed is that we can't get at mobility until we have parking outside of the city, right, at those entry corridors. And I think that we have to get beyond that assumption. And yes, the city doesn't have a light rail system, right? So people are coming here by car. So I understand that the thought behind why we need parking. But the truth is, right, if we look at the visitor center parking, we have parking for the majority of the year, but we have congestion and a mobility problem 365 days of the year, right? So that's every day. A long weekend, it's worse. A holiday, it's even worse. Night of lights, it becomes an issue that we cannot deny. Night of lights is not the problem. For me, the problem is, right, that's a symptom. Tourism reveals that we have a mobility problem. Our problem is we haven't yet got to our everyday mobility. And that is the foundation on which you layer events, right? So the idea that mobility can only be gotten at with parking and shuttles, I think that that's not effective everyday mobility solutions. We have to think about, first and foremost, tree canopy, right? So if we do not have an effective tree canopy, mobility is theoretical. I don't know, what is it, 6 months of the year, right? Second, we have to connect, and we've talked about this before, we have to connect, right, our neighborhoods to the downtown safely, which for me means we have to have safe biking lanes, and I don't mean paint on the ground. And I think for me personally that when I'm talking to people, the conversation about bike lanes and safe bike lanes and what's necessary has changed, right? So now we have the advent of e-bikes and e-scooters, and so now not only are they making the roads unsafe, but they're weaving back and forth, making our roads as well as our sidewalks. So cycling on sidewalks was never a mobility strategy. Yes, it was a safety strategy, but not a mobility. Now we need separated bike lanes so that, for example, e-bikes and e-scooters are forced to pick, and mobility now means that my kids, right, we love this downtown, my kids can bike safely downtown. And then the last is we have to have a priority transit system. Everybody wants the circulator to circulate and circulate further, right? So one of my neighbors had a kid who loved the circulator during the Sing Out Loud festival because it meant that they now had public transport from downtown all the way to the amphitheater. They actually didn't go to the events, but they loved having that available. So I think that we have to think in those ways, and we cannot wait until we have another big infrastructure outside the city. We have an everyday problem. Let's start addressing it. The other one is that, and we've talked about this before, if we are starting to get at mobility for the everyday, then I also think that we need to get at it for the night of lights. And I think that we have a model, right? From talking to businesses and residents from across the city, they have the 450th, right? That was from 2015, right? For the most part, everybody thought it was a tremendous success. It was something that our residents really wanted. They really enjoyed. They say it was the last big event downtown that they actually went to. Let's get creative. What did we learn from that event? What can we do differently? Let's trial it on the night of lights, right? Let's get real feedback, right, from all the stakeholders. Let's adjust, and then let's try it again, right? So that's something that can be exceptionally exciting, for both businesses. And again, that's one of those things, and residents and visitors and the city and the county, because I think there is where we can have overlap. But to get back to your question, we cannot wait. We can't prioritize like parking, and we can't prioritize cars within the city. The city was designed for horse and carriage, right? We have to start getting at every day and thinking about alternatives.
Oh yeah, I'm totally pie in the sky where, I would like to see St. Augustine become almost synonymous with biking. Like, oh, you went to St. Augustine? Oh, did you ride your bike around? Or did you walk around? Like, the pedestrian and biking infrastructure is so good that people want to park outside of town and ride their bike into a connected trail. I mean, we could have little satellite parking lots everywhere where people ride into town. Now, I understand that there's going to be mobility issues for people who can't do these things, but I mean, so many people have e-bikes now, and then right now they're buying them and they're riding around their neighborhoods like, what do we do with these things? Because I don't feel comfortable going out and doing anything.
Yes.
E-bikes or e-transportation fundamentally changes the equation. You actually said that. And right now what we're talking about is, all these whippersnappers are terrorizing everybody. I'm like, well, then let's give them some biking infrastructure and model good behavior.
Yes, and model good behavior. Exactly. And our city is small. It's small, it's flat.
Tiny.
So then let's do the tree infrastructure, which I think is obviously not palms. We need true tree canopy and separated bike lanes, and that way you can get safely downtown without just relying on a car.
Ashleigh, what's one sacred cow in St. Augustine politics that you think needs to be challenged?
Can I have two?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So first of all, that mobility has to wait. Like, we can't get to mobility until we have more parking outside the city. I think that is absolutely not the case. We have parking garage that meets our needs for the majority of the school year. My kids just got out of school. It must be on my brain. But we have to do mobility in the city now. The other is that somehow that something that is pro-resident is anti-tourism. I think that that's a false dichotomy. I think that there is an incredible amount of overlap, whether we're talking about residents versus businesses, or we're talking about tourism versus residents, or we're talking about city versus county. I think there is so much overlap that we get bogged down, or we talked about being painted in corners, that prevents us from listening to each other and seeing what each of these sectors bring to the table.
I just really want to see the city fulfill its potential in the beauty that it has. I'm really about, I want this town to be as pretty as I know that it can be.
Well, and it's a reflection it makes it a better place for our residents and our visitors. Again, overlap.
100%. Okay, if you could fix one thing overnight, no budget constraints, what would it be?
Oh, it would be mobility. Right?
Getting a light rail here?
Oh my gosh. Of course. So mobility. So what that means is that we have satellite parking outside the city. And that doesn't necessarily have to be huge infrastructure. That we would have safe biking lanes, right? So we would have tree canopy that makes the downtown accessible, right? This is tree canopy is mobility infrastructure. Otherwise, mobility is theoretical for, I would say, 6 months of the year, and we need a circulator that circulates. That's priority transit. So if I could do that overnight, that would be my magic wand, as we say in startup world.
All right, let's do some fun ones.
Okay.
What's something about you that people in St. Augustine would be surprised by?
Yeah, so most people know me as an attorney and a law professor. So yes, I do have a JD PhD. But what most people don't know is that since living in St. Augustine, that I'm actually a small business owner and an entrepreneur.
So as a small business owner, how does that change your perspective?
Well, I would say certainly I am a different person than I was 14 years ago as just an attorney and a law professor. So as a small business owner, right, and as an entrepreneur, right, it changes how I approach things. So yes, I've learned how to deal with complex issues and understand those trade-offs. But as an entrepreneur, you learn something totally different. So I'm relentlessly focused on vision and strategy. And it's not just ideas. We have a mobility plan. And I can say that my kids are the only ones that are excited about that gondola. Right? So we have these ideas. We need to also, so we need to get creative. We need to get to the implementation phase to be able to get to the improving phase, right? So there's a change, there's a difference. I can have ideas, but what do they mean in practice? And how can we relentlessly focus on creating a vision, but getting to that vision? It's fundamental.
Wait. So there's a plan that includes a gondola. Are we talking like Disneyland, like floating over the city?
Yeah, so obviously, when we ask for plans for how we can get at mobility, it always includes a few fun extras. So that was one of them. Yes. Okay. Again, I think only my kids are open to it.
I wonder what Henry Flagler would think.
Indeed.
All right. When you're not working or thinking about the city, what are you busy doing?
So I have 3 young kids.
Okay.
So my time is, you're in the phase of life that revolves around. We get to revolve around them and their, soccer schedule. So if I'm not revolving around my kids, then you'll find me. I'm also a runner. So some of my favorite places are Freedom Park and Volano, or at the gym, our local YMCA.
So how does having kids in the city, how do you think that changes your perspective? Because currently, I think you and Matt Brown are 2 working parents running for city commission. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes you unique, actually.
Yeah, so we have 3 kids that go to attend our local schools, right? It fundamentally changes how we view things. One of the best cases for this in particular is we had an application come before the board. And it related to thinking creatively of how to use an old warehouse. And that the application related to having a roller rink, right? We don't have one. Everybody here, we go to all the way to Clay County, where I used to live in Orange Park. And 2 of the members of the board had kids. No one else did. And it fundamentally changed. So on A1A, right, over the Bridge of Lions, we have all these incredible restaurants. How many of those spaces are geared towards our kids, and especially for the summer? So yes, we can go bowling, but here is an opportunity to have another fun, safe space that we can utilize year round, specifically for kids, right? So one of the 4 conditions for a variance is, does it serve a public benefit? For 2 of us, how we define public benefit was deeply rooted in our kids.
Are we talking about Ponce de la Roland?
Yes, we are.
What's one thing that you have changed your mind about in the last few years?
So I would say that the thing that I've changed my mind about is that governing doesn't happen based on ideology. Governing happens with building trust, communicating and listening, and implementation. So is our city getting more beautiful? Is it more functional? How does it feel safe-wise? Those are the issues where governance happens, not with any sort of ideology.
I agree with you. I think sometimes we pay attention too much to ideology and we're not paying attention to the outcomes, the things that are actually happening, which is what we should be measuring especially our local government by. They're the ones that affect your day-to-day livability, essentially.
Yes.
What does success look like to you in your first term or after your first term?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, success looks like people feeling like they have a seat at the table, right? They're more willing to listen. They feel like they're being heard, and everyone feels less fearful, right? And less negative, right? But in terms of specific things, so number 1, I would like to try a separated bike lane in a place that it's possible and where safety demands it the most. That's first and foremost. Second, I want to try the model for the 450th for one night of lights, but not stop there. I want to have one night of lights. I want to gather feedback from each member of the community, and then I want to trial it again so that we can learn, so we can have a real sense of what this might mean for an event that is very important, right, to the city's economy, and hopefully becomes important to our community.
So what I'm hearing, and what I think we all agree with, and I think you guys will too, is that St. Augustine is beloved, and we agree about most things. So anyway, I want to thank you for sitting down and talking to us.
Thank you.
This is Ashleigh Barnes, who is running for City Commission Seat 4, and I am Christian with St. Augustine TV. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, thanks for watching. For more local St. Augustine content, don't forget to like and subscribe.